Hi everyone! Happy, gosh, what day is it? It's the 10th. What day is it today? It's Tuesday. Oh my gosh. Hi, I have with me today the lovely Jan, who's gonna go ahead and introduce himself, guesting with us today, and he's gonna give us a little bit of insight into what he does and his work on Ghostrunner and stuff like that. So Jan, if you want to go ahead and just dive right in, let us know who you are, what you do, why you're here, and things like that. Go on and go ahead.
All right, so my name is Jan, as Lindsey introduced, and I work in One More Level, and I've worked on Ghostrunner, the game that Lindsey was kind enough to voice, one of the characters. And I'm really happy to be here tonight to talk to you about Ghostrunner and about being a narrative designer and a writer, and I'll be happy to tell you some interesting facts about my work and about the Ghostrunner, and to answer any and all of your questions. So I should just get going right now. I mean,
do you have anything you wanna say in particular before we dive in or anything?
I mean, we can start just now, right now. Okay.
Perfect. For those of you who are coming in from the Ghostrunner Twitter or anything like that, my name is Lindsey Vega. Or you can call me Phelan. That's my name on Twitch. I prefer typically on Twitch to be that. And as Jan said, I had the absolute pleasure of voicing Zoe in Ghostrunner, so it's an absolute honor to have Jan with us here today. And if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to put them out in the chat. The mods are going to be keeping an eye out, and I will be as well. So if you have any questions in terms of, what's it like to be a narrative designer, and what's it like to have worked on this awesome project, or if you had any questions about, how the dynamic between the, narrative designer and how a voice actor work together to bring these characters to life, things like that, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. We will be happy to go ahead and answer them. But I guess I'll just get us started off so we can have some questions come in if anybody has any. And I'll just first start with, as a narrative designer, what kind of role do you actually have as, like, in the production of a project such as Ghostrunner? Like, what is your job in particular, so that people who don't exactly know what the term is can get an idea?
All right, so I explain it, and well, basically, as a narrative designer / writer, I wear many different hats, because depending on the stage of the project, what you do, what I do, changes drastically. Like at the beginning, there's a need to just, come up with a story, to just sketch some outline, to prepare some plan for what's going to be in the game, what the game is going to be about. And then as the project progresses and as everything starts to be put together and the creative process progresses, then you'll come to the part where you write the actual script. So that's the dialogue that's going to be in the game, all the character lines, everything that happens. Like, for example, script for the cutscenes. That's also what a narrative designer has to have in mind. And as well as any additional world building. So, for example, audio logs and the collectible items. That's everything has to come together to give off some coherent image of the game world and to portray the reality that's going to be in the game. And once that's ready to go, I mean, that's how it was for Ghostrunner. Once the script is ready and approved, comes the fun part, and that is the recording. And that's
Yay!
When we've met. And as I was saying just before we actually started, I was saying to Lindsey, that's the fun part, because that's when when you as a narrative designer actually get the feeling that it's really coming together, that it's really happening. Like all those lines that you've written and rewritten and edited and changed back to what it was before, they finally get spoken out loud by a real actor, and it's not just a voice in your head, and it's an actual actor or actress. And well, if you're working with someone as talented as our cast for Ghostrunner,
Stop.
No, it's true. It's a wonderful feeling because all those times you've actually read it to yourself in your head, then you hear it just perfectly, and then it becomes real in a way. So that's the fun part, and once that's done, then comes the boring part, and that's implementing that into the game. So actually making sure that everything's when it's supposed to, that the timing is correct, that everything fires off at the precise, correct moment. And it's also fun, but it's much more, it's more meticulous, let's say.
I mean, you're trying to get these lines that you've recorded that are X amount of length in recording and try to put those into specific places. I can imagine that's really difficult. And I'm pretty sure some stuff had to end up getting cut because like it didn't quite fit in that scene and things like that. So I don't envy that.
Oh, yes, exactly. There's plenty of going back in and swapping things around and changing them and rearranging and cutting and trying to make 30 seconds dialogue fit in 12 seconds of screen time and so on and so forth. So yeah, that is meticulous, but it is also fun because you finally see it in action. You actually hear the actors' lines playing in the correct places in the game, and by that time the game is starting to look quite good, or actually really good. And then for the first time you can see that, so this is how it's going to play in the final product. So you get a feeling that it's worth all that work.
Right.
Yeah, and in the meantime, there's also many different additional tasks that you need to handle, like, for example, the intro, the outro, that are quite different from the regular game dialogue, and they also need scripts, and they also need to be produced, and they need to get done, and then they need to fit with everything else that happens in the game. So yeah, that's basically it. There are couple of very different stages in what I do and what I did for the Ghostrunner, and I've said it before and I'm going to repeat that recording was the most fun of all these parts.
How did it feel like once you I mean, in the first place, I assume that the level design and stuff was the beginning part, because a huge focus of the game is that fast-paced movement and whatnot. Did you get to play the game beforehand, like before you were able to implement not the full game, but like, did you get to play any of the levels before you were able to start implementing any story or anything like that? Or was it kind of like, okay, we have this idea, come up with this?
Well, basically, in this case, the process was quite simultaneous. Like, there was lots and lots of work going on in many different departments at once. So, for example, the levels were being created, and meanwhile the final form of the script was shaping up. So yeah, I played the levels when they were far from complete, and I was trying to anticipate what is going to be happening here. Although it is kind of difficult in some cases to predict what the final shape is going to be like, and always there is lots and lots of adjustment that need to be made. And as I've learned, going back in and changing things and going back in and changing them again and starting from scratch for 100 times is bread and butter of game development.
Right.
So basically, at every point, you need to be sure that what you're doing is, in concert, that it works with what everyone else is doing. So if something changes, everything else needs to account for that.
Of course. It's awesome. Have you, in particular, have you worked on like any other video game projects? I know you're a writer, so you probably have done a bunch of other stuff. But in terms of video games, have you worked on anything else in the past that we could find your work in?
Actually, Ghostrunner is my first video game. I mean, I've worked on a couple of different projects, but not as a writer and not professionally. I was dabbling in 3D graphics, and I was part of some, just fun amateur projects, and I got some experience there, but nothing to compare to that. Actually, before I came to work for Ghostrunner for One More Level, I was in the business of how to call that city games. So that's like Easter egg hunts with plot. You could
Oh,
say.
interesting. That's cool.
Yeah,
So you have experience like in the game developer side too. So I assume that would probably give you some insight into being able to more easily kind of start sorting your story out and trying to meld it together because you already have an idea of how that developer side of things works as well.
Well, actually, for me, it was trying to come and see how working on those other kinds of games. So, for example, those city games and Easter egg hunts, and
Right.
we also did some more complicated projects like crime game when some players act as investigators and try to solve a crime going throughout the city and meeting different suspects. So this kind of a plot-heavy location-based game, I'd say. Anyway, I'm also into LARPing and RPGs, so writing stories. Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you do any like tabletop RPGs like in your own time, or are you pretty much just invested in the story side of things?
I play all the time.
Me too. I love tabletop RPGs. That's so awesome. And I mean, I think it kind of shows too with the amount of world building that you were able to accomplish, not just like with the narrative that's told, because the most of Ghostrunner is told through voice communications with the architect and Zoe and Mara. And you can tell that there was that extra level of love put into it because it's kind of just so fun how you guys put different items everywhere, and there's each of them have like a piece of lore, and there are the audio logs from the architect and everything, and you guys did a great job. That's all I gotta say. The world building is fantastic, and I hope you end up continuing it because
All right, thank you. It's very nice of you to say. As you've said, and that's perfectly correct. That sums it up. Ghostrunner is very action-oriented game.
right.
So basically, one of the main challenges for me, for the others as well, was how to tell a story without it getting in the way of the gameplay and without it slowing down the fun. Some people, I mean, I was also one of these people, are used to, more, how to say it, quite different storytelling with loads of cutscenes and, slower pace for the story-heavy elements where you...
I mean, that's a big part of why Ghostrunner is so unique, I think, because there is that story there, and it's just so in its own realm where you can, if you really want to, you could just completely ignore everything, which I highly don't recommend because the story is awesome. But you can just go through it wham bam, but it's all so fluid. Like when I was playing, I was getting attached to these characters that I was, meeting and all at the same time also having a blast just slashing people apart. So that must have been pretty difficult in terms of the gameplay is super flashy and you don't want to distract from that, but you also want to drive home a really cool narrative.
Yeah, the idea was for the narrative to be there if you wish to engage it. So if you just want to speed through the level and kill everyone in your way and break your record and get to the end of the level in record time, you're welcome to, and nothing's gonna stop you. Well, there are some cutscenes that can stop you for some time, but not for long. But if you are so inclined, you can just stand around and listen to the dialogue and interact with the world more in depth and pay attention to the story if you so desire, and hunt for those extra items that give you this additional layer of insight into the world. So that's what we were going for, and I think it works. For what it's worth, I think it works because always the main level, the main challenge, the main focus, the main goal was for the story to complement, to supplement the gameplay, and not to overshadow it, not to slow it down, because that would be disastrous for the game.
You don't want the story to be annoying in the grand scheme of things when somebody's just trying to like hack and slash if they're not interested in narrative. So I think that like you guys did a fantastic job of that, especially if you go around and you do find all of those audio logs and you find all of the items and stuff. You guys really brought to life all of the city, the base, the tower, everything. And it really shows how much love you did put into it. So thank you for all of that work, because it really showed and I really enjoyed it. And I cried like a baby at the end because I'm a loser, but you know.
Well, thank you for your kind words. And the ending sequence is my favorite part, probably.
Oh, the art for it is so beautiful. And we for anybody's spoilers, but I guess I would assume if you're watching this, you probably would know already that there would be spoilers. But we finally get to see Zoe at the end. It's so cool. So that was really fun to get through and then get the pleasure of watching such a visually pleasing cutscene. And I think it came out beautifully, and I think it complemented the game very well. If you had the opportunity to, like, let's say you had wanted to like, if you had been given the opportunity to put more cutscenes and like add more dialogue and stuff, would you have done that?
Well, I would, but I would be very careful about it.
Right.
I would put it in some optional places. There is some optional dialogue that you can miss, but not much. And I would probably put in more of that. So, you know, to reward exploration and to reward searching for the lore more. Like, for example, there are some voices from behind closed doors that you were also recording, and that you are great at it.
Call the god. Oh.
That's right. Praise the architect. Anyway, I would probably go for something like this. I would put in some additional optional content that would be there for those who so desire to find.
Right, because, to get a little bit more of a piece.
Cluttering the main story probably wouldn't do good for the game, but yeah, so that's it. I would add more. I would gladly use that opportunity, but not for, you know, cluttering the main path of the Ghostrunner.
Right. Well, out of all the characters then that you ended up writing, who's your favorite, and why is it Zoe? I'm kidding. It can totally not be Zoe. It's fine.
It's totally Zoe, but I can think about my second favorite. Or I can tell you why Zoe is the best one.
You can do both if you want to. I'll leave it to you.
Well, actually, I think there's not many of them, so I love them all equally. But well, I do have to say that I have particular fondness for the Ghostrunner himself, and that's because originally, when we first started to, you know, plan out the game, he was supposed to be a mute character. He was supposed to just not respond at all to anyone.
Oh, really?
And the story would just unfold with him being completely mute, like you would just... well, it happens a lot in video games. Maybe not as often as before, but silent protagonist is still very popular, and in a way it would fit. But on the other hand, we felt that, well, actually, when you have limited means of telling a story, because as we've mentioned, you are constrained by the requirements of an action-driven game, a silent protagonist would take away from the ability to, you know, really show emotion, I guess.
Right, and I mean, there was... Oh, go on, continue.
Oh, no.
I mean, it was. I think it was a wonderful idea to kind of go away from the silent protagonist idea, because in the end, you know, first of all, Carl did a fantastic job as the Ghostrunner, but also I feel like it breathed a lot more life into the narrative as well, to have that evolution of the Ghostrunner himself or of Jack throughout the story, and I really did get attached to him too.
Well, basically, I think it works on the level that when you start out, you don't really know what's going on, and neither does he.
Right.
But as the story progresses, he becomes more and more aware of what's going on and who the people he's interacting with are, and it kind of supports that that point in the narrative about free will and about being able to communicate, and about being just a puppet and not being a puppet.
Right.
And I feel by giving him a voice, we made sure that he can be something more than just a puppet.
Right.
I mean, if he were a silent protagonist, then it would feel more like he really is just a mindless robot, I guess.
Right. And I forget if it was mentioned entirely exactly what Jack is. Is he supposed to be fully robotic, or is he a cyborg? Or are you not able to say anything?
Oh no, it's perfectly canonic, and it's in the lore that he's part flesh and part implants, so he is a cyborg.
So he is a cyborg, right? Right. I ended up missing it, I guess, somehow. I don't know, but I just wanted to clarify, because I know that I saw a few people in the Discord who also were kind of confused, because maybe they missed it as well. So thank you for clarifying that. And that adds like another layer of depth to it as well, because, there's the combative part of the cyber void and his AI side versus, the humanity that's within him as well.
There's, I think, a couple of different parts in the game that specifically mention that he has some biological components,
right.
But I fully expect people to miss it, because a lot is going on, and well, it's to be expected. So actually, I really like people asking those kinds of questions, because whenever someone is, wondering whether Jack is human or is he a robot, it means that those people that wonder that, they're interested in the story and in the world of the game. So.
Right. By the way, chat, if you guys end up having any questions, please feel free to go ahead and chime in and let us know. But here's a good one. In terms of when you were writing the story, did you have any particular inspirations that you looked at, like within movies or other video games or history or anything?
Oh yeah, plenty of inspiration. Basically, I always say that Ghostrunner is all about inspiration, about taking the favorite parts of Cyberpunk as a genre and putting them together in a creative way. So,
right.
Well, I think that we didn't really try to reinvent the wheel. We didn't break down an open door, and I think it's a good thing. Basically, when I was thinking about it some time ago, it reminds me, our approach reminds me of the Love, Death and Robots anthology on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've never seen it, unfortunately. I gotta check it out.
All right, I highly recommend it anyway. There are some really great cyberpunk short movies,
right.
And they basically showcase what's best, what's most flashy about Cyberpunk. And there's just a couple of minutes, intense action, stunning visual design, and it's really, really beautiful and intense. And as I said, it's basically not reinventing the wheel, but just highlighting what's the most fun, what's the most appealing about Cyberpunk.
Right. I mean, I think that's a good way to go in terms of just, it's not necessarily playing it safe. It's more so taking the best things and making something really, really solid with it.
Yeah. But if I were to name one most personal inspiration from me, because, everyone in the team has their own inspirations, and it shows. Like, basically everyone has some beloved Cyberpunk game or a movie or other work. And it all sums up to the entirety of the game. But for me, it was Battle Angel Alita. But not the movie from last year, but the original manga from the 90s.
Oh, wow.
It's got this really, really gritty, dark vibe to it. Like, it's cyberpunk, but it also post-apocalyptic. And it's really, really brutal and violent, and it's got this, as I said, just grimy, gritty, dirty look to it. Everything is rusty and everything is falling apart, and there's no hope. And I really love that vibe, and for me, that was one of the inspirations. For those of you who've seen the movie, because I think there's more of those than those who read the manga,
Right.
there are some quite obvious similarities, because Alita also fell from up high down to the city, to the scrap city below. So,
Okay. Interesting. I gotta check out that manga as well. I've been looking for some new ones to check out. I did have a question from a member of the chat. Super Mega Punch asked, were there any bits of dialogue that got cut that you wish made it into the final game?
yes, most definitely. There were some that I really loved, but there was really no place to put them.
Right.
Uh,
Oh, the
I
creative
think-
mind.
No, basically, we were trying whenever possible to avoid the dialogue overlapping combat, because it's just not a good idea. And we wanted to
Right.
make sure that if you're going at a regular pace, that it's, if you are not speedrunning and if you are not playing the game for the 100th time, if you are going, you're quite skilled and you know what you're doing, but you know, like super fast, that you are able to pass through a level while hearing the dialogue play for the entirety of the time you are out of combat and none of the time in combat.
Right. I really enjoyed the fact that there was that separation, because it takes a lot of focus to actually be involved in the actual combat in that game. So you did a great job.
Yeah, I was, well, basically the way it plays perfectly is the way I played, because obviously the person who was testing it and retesting it and testing it again and tweaking and moving it was me. So my speed of playing is basically how long it takes for me to complete a level is how long it takes to complete a level with that intended dialogue out of combat and non-dialogue overlapping the combat.
Right.
But anyway, back to the question. There were some exchanges between Zoe and Jack that added some depth, so to speak, to their relation. And I think like 2 or 3 of those exchanges were unable to fit to the final cut, so to speak. And yeah, I would really like for them to be there, but I mean, the story is complete without them, but if some levels somehow got a little bit longer, I would definitely put them back in, because they would add some.
Yeah, because I remembered going through the game and I was like, I don't think I heard this one, but I don't remember if it was in this spot or anything like that. So I'm sure that was a really difficult process, because we had so much fun recording for those dialogues, especially between like Jack and Zoe, and knowing how nasty the architect was being about Zoe behind her back. But I think my favorite one probably was that I think got caught was like the MGS style scream that I had to do, Jack. So that was something I was like, oh man, we didn't see it, but then I heard the old lady and that made up for it. So
yeah, the old lady was definitely a highlight of the entire game.
Do you have like a particular favorite line in the game of dialogue that you wrote?
Well,
you don't have to if it's too hard.
No, actually, there are some lines that I was struggling with, like rewriting them for a couple of times, or somebody was making fun of them after they got released, or a bit of dialogue was annoying because it was repeating in a place where people were dying over and over again. So it got ridiculous. Yeah, I got some, info about Amida elevator station that. If you're fighting Tom for like half an hour or an hour and you are constantly being welcomed to a mid elevator station,
welcome, Tom.
Apparently it got annoying.
It was honestly, it made me mess up so much more than I would have if I like muted the audio.
Well, I wouldn't know about that because I was struggling with the level before putting audio in. And
okay.
when I was putting in the audio, I was already able to, do it in like 1 or 2 tries. So I thought, just whatever, they will make it. It will be fine.
Right.
Apparently, it's not. I think Media Station shouldn't be as welcoming.
Well, it definitely did not feel welcoming. I died like 240 times, which is pretty bad, but I made it. I beat the game. If I can beat it, anyone can. I think there was, hold on, there was a question. Oh yeah, so MLG Putin says, do you have any thoughts on speedruns or speedruns overall with Ghostrunner in mind? I guess in terms of like, how do you feel about them? Do you enjoy them? Do you enjoy watching them? Does the team enjoy watching them?
Oh yeah, the team loves it. I mean, it's really impressive for the level designers and for the game designers to see what people can do with their game, because up until the release point, we were as a team, but the level designers in particular were the ones that were able to master it, and they were, way too good to play
Right.
as a normal player, and they had to take people from other departments to, test for. Like, for example, like some artist was asked to play a level and they would die too many times. All right, maybe it's a bit too hard and maybe we can tweak it. But then after the game was released, suddenly it turned out that people do things that were, unheard of or unthought of before. And it's impressive. I mean, we do love it as a team. As I've mentioned, the level designers in particular, I think.
Right.
Well, for me, it's bittersweet because speedrunning is all about skipping the story.
Oh no.
But as I said, it's a game that offers you a story if you want to
Right.
get involved with it and doesn't force you to. So, I mean, it is impressive. Basically, well, it's not speedrunning really, but I do engage with friendly challenges with those of my friends who do play Ghostrunner and try to beat their times, and they try to beat mine, and yeah.
Well, there's a leaderboard, so I guess that's partially a point of it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's part of the appeal, and I think many of people love it, and basically I do love it too, although I'm in no way, shape, or form a speedrunner. No, it's great. It's great because it's this appeal of the game. If it's good enough to keep people engaged, to make them really want break those records, it's fantastic. It's all we could hope for, and I'm really happy that people enjoy speedrunning, and I do enjoy watching speedruns, although I'm not able to do that myself all that well.
Yeah, of course. I also I actually make it an aim to run games as slowly as possible. So definitely because I'm just very invested in stories. No other reason. But we did have a question from Rad Knight. With their reputations for having them in previous games they've worked on, was it 3D Realms that suggested having secret areas?
Well, not that I'm aware of, although do bear in mind that I'm the narrative designer, and that would be the level design, although I've been around those guys long enough to know that I don't think so. I mean, I haven't heard anything like it, so I'd say probably no.
Right.
I do know that we wanted to put in some, little Easter eggs and put in some fun stuff for people to find just for the fun of it. There's plenty of references to, as I've mentioned before, Ghostrunner is really the fruit of our love for Cyberpunk, and putting in all those references, putting all those Easter eggs in is our way of highlighting it, I'd say.
Right. I know we were talking about this beforehand, and I wanted to make sure it came up because I think a lot of people in my community would be interested in this, since I know there are folks who are interested in voiceover in particular. But in terms of the process of picking the right candidate for these characters, did you already have like because George ended up sifting through a lot of the auditions and narrowed it down for you guys. That's normally what a casting director does. I audition, I send it to the casting director, they narrow it down, they give it to the developers, and then the developers get to be like, okay, we're gonna crunch down on this and decide who's going to voice this character, this character, this character. How hard was that? And did you already have like an idea in your head of the characters that you wanted, and did they change when you ended up hearing these auditions?
Well, to address the first part of the question, it was very, very hard. It was really hard because, as I've mentioned before, we went live. Well, everybody brings something unique to the table, and there's often this situation where you hear those lines from the audition, and you think, in this line, he's perfect, but in this other line, the other guy is even more perfect, and it's a mess. It's really hard, you know, because you can actually imagine that the character changes a little bit depending on the voice actor, and it's the voice actor that gives the character life, brings them to life. So everybody does it a bit differently, but okay, I could definitely imagine it being this kind of character, but if he was a bit more like this, and it also makes sense. So it's really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine like all the different approaches that you would get as someone who's trying to create these characters. It would make it just so horribly difficult because there's so many talented people out there, and so many like amazing voice actors. And I think you did a great job of picking some awesome people, me aside. Carl was great, Sheila was great, Eileen amazing, Mark Dodson absolutely fantastic as well. And I think that everybody kind of came together in a really, really great way. And I think each voice did complement the story really well. So you guys did a good job on that as well.
Yeah, it was hard, and it wasn't just my decision. I mean, it was quite demanding, and yeah, it was a team effort.
Yeah, I totally didn't pay them to cast me.
No, she totally did not, I guess. Anyway, also you've asked about the character, how the character is supposed to sound.
Right.
It was also a fun experience, the fact that in Ghostrunner, most of the voices are processed. So, for example, the Ghostrunner's voice is processed, the architect's voice, when he's not Adam in the audio logs, is also processed, Mara's voice as well, Hal's voice is heavily processed. So it's this extra layer, because at the time of the audition, you need to, think about, all right, but how will it sound in the final form? Do we even know how we want it to sound in the end? And you need to think ahead how all these voices will play together in the final intended form. So yeah, it was really hard, and I'm glad that we made the choices we did. Well, actually, Mark Dodson was part of the project even before I came aboard, because I wasn't there from day one, and Mark Dodson was already casted when I came, and basically writing the architect's dialogue. I was writing the entirety of the architect's dialogue with Mark Dodson's voice in mind. So in a way, his character was already there, because he's so he's so charismatic. He's so intense, really.
I mean, he's been doing voiceover for a very long time now, so it absolutely makes sense that he has that level of confidence and his particular cadence and whatnot, just with how he is as a person. So that's really cool that you were able to, at least with him already cast, have someone's voice already in mind while writing these lines.
Yes, it changes the perspective, and it's easier, really, because in a way, you already know what a person with a voice like that would said and what they wouldn't.
Right. We have another question, or well, a couple of questions. How much influence did the intended narrative have on the level design in terms of atmosphere and mood, or vice versa? Did the narrative shape around some of the art? I feel like we touched on this a little bit more, but if you want to expand on it, go for it.
Well, it depends on the level, really.
Right.
Because as I've mentioned, everything in the process, everything in the different department keeps changing, and you need to account for all the changes. So basically, you need to keep up and work around what the other members of the team are doing. It's not like one part of the game is ready and then we can move on and then we can move on to the next one, but basically it's all a process. So when it turns out that something needs to be changed in the level design, then you need to account for that, and it's back and forth and you can't really foresee everything at the very beginning, because you need to be flexible and you need to adapt, and you need to make sure that basically you keep up with everyone else. So I think it worked both ways, or actually more than both, because there's level art and there's level design and there's game design and there's a narrative. But we tried our best, to keep in touch and to stay on the same page and to make sure that all the aspects of the game make sense together. Although, that being said, we also always repeat, and I think I've already touched up on that our orientation is very gameplay first.
Right.
So basically, the narrative follows whatever the
follows
gameplay.
In line with that, yeah.
Yep. Basically, if it was up to me, I might be tempted to, stop the gameplay for some time and force the player to experience some interaction. But no.
Embrace
you can't
my
do that.
world.
And I shouldn't do that. I might be tempted to, but luckily nobody let me. And gameplay first. It only makes sense, and it makes Ghostrunner what it is, and it's better this way. I mean,
right.
That's what it's supposed to be, and it's great.
Right, there's no extra like fluff around it. It's just awesome gameplay, and then you have the story told to you, and this exposition given to you while you're moving around, and then at the end, right? So I think that in the way that we've already talked about this, but I think you guys did a fantastic job of really balancing that, and I can't say that enough, because I really enjoyed it. Let me see if there's any, chat, if you have any other questions, please, again, feel free to go ahead and ask them. Here's an interesting one. In terms of game development and whatnot, I know that right now, with COVID and everything going on, it's been insanity. How was it working with your team during all of this, because you guys had to put all the finishing touches up beforehand, and it's been going on for quite some time now?
Well, it was surprisingly efficient, I'd say.
Right.
I mean, it took some getting used to, but after we switched to remote work, I think it was very convenient for most of the team. I mean, obviously it's different, but it's not necessarily all that bad. When you get used to it, when you get used to the fact that you work from home, and that everybody else also works from home, it has its advantages.
Of course.
Like, for example, you save a lot of time on getting
commutes and everything.
Basically, you just get out of bed and you start working, and then you stop working and you get back into bed, and then you can spend more time working, and it's pretty efficient. I mean, for me, it wasn't really much of a problem, because my department doesn't really require all that much interaction. In the way, the level designers love to, test each other's levels. So, for example, they would play and watch others play, and they would ask, as I've mentioned, people from other departments to play and watch them play. And they can't really stress enough how important that is, to watch others play.
Right.
Because then they're able to, just draw conclusions from the way people play the game. For example, they can see that somebody's getting frustrated at some given point, or they can see that somebody got lost. And it's not necessarily easy to spot when somebody's streaming the gameplay. So obviously it can be done, but it's different than watching the person play, from third-person perspective, when you can see what they are doing on the screen, and at the same time you can watch the person. So I know that's been downside. One of the downsides I can think of. I'm pretty sure there was much more of the downsides, but as I've mentioned, for me the main tool is basically Google Docs, because I'm a writer, so I write, and there's not all that much interaction required to do that efficiently.
Well, that's good.
The truth be told, for me it's sometimes easier to just stay at home, do my thing, write my pages, and don't necessarily interact with everyone else. But there are definitely some. Well, obviously, if you need to show someone something or quickly ask them about something,
and you have to set up all the tech and everything. It's yeah,
definitely.
Oh, I can imagine.
All in all, I would say it was surprisingly efficient, and it wasn't all that bad. Although I probably suffered less than some of the others.
Right. I mean, I think honestly, I'd be willing to go out on a limb here and say that in terms of the quality that was put out, despite doing a lot of the work from home and remotely, you guys really raised the bar for like indie games. If you could even call Ghostrunner an indie game, absolutely insane. The quality is phenomenal. You did like everyone did such a great job. I really think it's just interesting to see how teams are overcoming this hurdle, because it's really hard to try and get all of that communication done and in a timely manner as well, because a lot of games are being pushed back and whatnot. And luckily that did not happen for you folks, because you stayed on track and you were able to get things done.
Oh yeah, it was a challenge, but luckily we were able to deliver. And thank you for your kind words again about the quality of the game.
Well, go on.
Yeah. No.
I think we had a question. We're gonna probably be ending, I guess, in the next 10 minutes, because it's late where Jan is. I don't want him to be staying up way past his bedtime. But let me go ahead and see here. Oh, how do you start your creative process? This is a more personal question. How do you start your creative process for writing, and what is your routine for it in general?
Well, that's a very interesting question, but it's kind of difficult. I mean, that really depends on what I am writing. Although I find out that putting down on paper your general ideas, right? For example, drawing a diagram. I would just, whatever I'm thinking about, a story or a game or anything else, I like to just put down the central points of the story or the central characters. Like, for example, let's say we've got a hero and a villain and some additional supporting actors. I would just put them down on paper, their names, and draw some arrows between them. So, for example, X wants to kill Y, and Y wants to do something with Z, and so on and so forth. And then it becomes a mess, and you can't really tell what's going on because there's so many arrows going around. But then I get a feeling that, all right, that's something. I've put it down on paper, so now it's real, and now I can work with that, and I start to create more and more refined versions that start to make sense.
Awesome. There was another question that I saw in chat as well. If you were given the opportunity to expand on like any of the character arcs in general, or any part of the project, is there like a particular one that you would want to expand on?
I would say each and every one of them. I mean,
right.
world building is really fun for me, and I do love it. So it's what I do. If given an opportunity, I would love to expand each and every one of them. As I said, I don't think there's anything that would be less appealing to me. Yeah, I would just expand it all around.
It's so hard, I guess, because it's something so near and dear, right? Let me see here. If we have any last questions, by the way, feel free to go ahead and put them in chat, and I'll go ahead and get them in before we end up leaving. But oh, here's an interesting thing. Was it a challenge to try to create a unique story and world in terms of trying to avoid being too similar to other IPs and whatnot?
I mean, I don't know if we did avoid it. It's not for me to judge, really.
Right.
As I've said, I had a feeling, and I still do, that given the constraints, I mean, given the circumstances under which we were building our world, it wouldn't make sense to try and tell a story that would be too complicated, too convoluted, too intricate. I mean, we went for a simple story, for the story of the climb from the top to the bottom with pretty clear stakes. And I do feel that there's enough variety, there's enough intricacy to the world to set it apart. I do feel that while being inspired and paying homage to many different works of the genre, we do have our own world and our own tone.
Right.
But it's not for me to judge, really. As I said, was it difficult? I'd say yes, but to know if it was difficult, I would need to know if we succeeded in that. And
well, I think you did, but I'm biased.
Well, you might be. Anyway, I think there's always this line, this thin line probably, between being too close to what's considered cliche or
right.
too obvious, and what comes off as too contrived and too muddy and too forced.
Right.
And I do not really appreciate stories that are in your face original, that are trying desperately to be something
all
really
in one small little game where they just give you way too much information. It's too much to digest. I totally get it. Yeah.
So
go on.
I feel like keeping it simple is the way to go. And as I've mentioned, that's what we were aiming for. And if we've managed to keep it simple while setting ourselves apart from the other works of the genre, it's for each and every one of our players to decide.
Right.
And I'm happy that you decided that we did good. But
was there anything that you wanted to touch on before we end up letting you go for the night?
I guess I should tell you all to play Ghostrunner because it's a fun game.
It just came out on the Switch today, right?
Oh, it's the 10th. Okay,
it's
yes,
the 10th.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Very exciting.
As I mentioned, I'm on vacation, so I'm a little out of touch, probably. Anyway, I always say that I don't really like difficult games, because I mostly play RPGs and turn-based strategies in my free time, but I actually do love Ghostrunner's gameplay, so I do highly recommend it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm part of the team, because it was a different part of the team that came up with the gameplay, but I do think that the guys did a great job, and I do think that if you give Ghostrunner a chance, you might fall in love with the gameplay and hopefully with the world and with the story as well, even if you are not a hardcore gamer. And if you are a hardcore gamer, I think you should most definitely play it.
Yeah, I think most people who enjoy difficult games will absolutely love Ghostrunner, because I really fell in love with, not only the story, but also the phenomenal movement and everything. So you guys did great. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us tonight and giving us a nice amount of your time during like such a late time of the evening for you. For those of you who are unaware or have not seen any of their social medias, here are all of the links. They have a Twitter for Ghostrunner. There is a Facebook. There's also their website, and you can also go ahead and go to One More Level Games' website as well if you want to check out their other projects that they are working on. Ghostrunner is available on PC on like Steam, Epic, GOG, and it's on PS4, Xbox.
That's right.
And it's gonna be a free upgrade for next gen as well. Like, and now today Nintendo Switch. So if you guys are interested in picking it up, you can go ahead and pick it up there. And thank you so much, Jan, for joining me this evening and for joining the community as well. I hope that you had a good time, and I hope that, you know, these questions were easy and fun for you to answer for us.
It was great, really, and thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and it's been a blast, and nice talking to you and face to face for the first time, I think. And yeah, so
awesome. We're gonna head out of here, chat. I might be back later this evening, probably around like 7 o'clock. I'll let you all know for some games and whatnot. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if we missed any of your questions, I am sure that they would be more than happy to answer them in the Ghostrunner Discord as well. There is a Discord. You can find it on their website very easily. I think there's like an actual logo for it that you can just go ahead and click. But that said, thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We love you, and have a wonderful, wonderful night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.